the great void, and the spark of life. Tonight and now, close your eyes for a moment and let the weight of the day drift away like a leaf, settling onto the surface of a still, dark pond. Imagine you are seated in a place of perfect safety. Perhaps you are wrapped in a heavy wool blanket, the kind woven with care and time, feeling the gentle warmth of a hearth fire as it dances against the ancient stones of a longhouse. Outside, the world is draped in the deep velvet blue of a northern night. The wind whispers through the pine needles a low melodic sigh that carries the scent of resin and distant snow. High above the stars are not merely points of light, but the watchful eyes of the ancestors shimmering over a landscape of fjords and frost. This is where our journey begins, in the quiet heart of the north, before the first mountain was raised, before the first wave broke upon the shore. To understand the world of the Norse, you must first imagine a time when there was nothing. No earth, no grass, no sky above. There was only the Ginnunga gap, the yawning void. It was a silence so profound, it had its own weight, a vast echoing emptiness that stretched between the edges of existence. In the ancient texts of the Poetic Edda, the seeress tells us that in this beginning there was neither sand nor sea nor cooling waves. The sun did not know her wandering path, and the moon did not know his power. You are standing at the very edge of this void, feeling the immense stillness of a universe that has not yet drawn its first breath. Yet even in this nothingness, there were two realms that existed on the far horizons of the void. To the north lay Niflheim, a world of primordial ice, dark mists, and biting shadows. You can feel the chill of it, even now a cold so deep it seems to slow the very beating of your heart. From its center flowed the spring Hvergelmir, the source of 11 frozen rivers. These rivers, known as the Elivagar, drifted into the void, their waters hardening into layers of rime and glacier, piling one upon the other in the silent dark. But to the south, there was Muspelheim. This was a realm of glowing embers, dancing flames, and roaring heat. It was a place of vibrant, pulsing energy, guarded by the giant Surtur, whose flaming sword shone brighter than any sun. You stand in the center in the Ginnunga Gap, where these two opposites began to reach for one another. It is a fundamental truth of the Norse world that life does not spring from stillness, but from the meeting of extremes. As the warm winds from Muspelheim met the frozen mists of Niflheim, the ice began to soften. It didn't just melt, it quickened. In that gentle dripping, in that thaw occurring in the heart of the emptiness, a spark of consciousness was ignited. From the drops of melting rime, the first being emerged, Ymir, the father of all giants. Ymir was not a god nor a man, but a vast elemental force, a personification of the raw materials of the cosmos. As Ymir slept, he sweated, and from his very body the first generations of giants were born. But Ymir was not alone in the thaw. From the same melting ice came Audhumla, the great cow. She is a symbol of the nourishing, sustaining power of the earth. As Ymir drank, the 4 rivers of milk that flowed from her Audhumla licked the salty ice blocks to find her own sustenance. You can almost hear the rhythmic, slow sound of her tongue against the frost, a peaceful sound, in the vast quiet of the beginning. As she licked the ice, something marvelous happened. On the first day, a man's hair emerged from the block. On the second day, a head. And by the third day, a whole man stood revealed. This was Buri, the first of the gods, strong, beautiful, and tall. Buri would eventually have a son named Bor, who married a giantess named Bestla. Together, they gave birth to 3 brothers who would change the destiny of the void forever, Odin, Vili, and Ve. You watch as these three brothers grow their spirits filled with a restlessness that the giants did not possess. They looked upon the vast chaotic form of Ymir and the endless empty void of Ginnungagap, and they felt a divine urge to create order from the silence. This is a pivotal moment in the mythology, the transition from the raw, unconscious state of nature to the conscious, deliberate act of creation. The brothers knew that for a world to be born, the primordial state had to end. In a struggle that shook the foundations of the emptiness, they slew the giant Ymir. The story tells us that Ymir's blood flowed with such force that it drowned almost all of the other giants, save for one couple who escaped in a hollowed-out tree trunk to ensure their race would continue. But for the gods, Ymir's body became the canvas for the entire universe. As you look around you now, the Norse would tell you that you are walking within the remnants of that first giant. They took his flesh and fashioned the earth. His unbroken bones became the mountains. His teeth and broken bone fragments became the rocks and stones you see along the shoreline. Consider the vast rolling oceans that surround the world. To the ancient Scandinavians, these were the blood of Ymir, circling the earth in an endless, salty embrace. The sky above you, that great dome of blue or starlit black, was crafted from his skull, held up at the four corners by four industrious dwarves named Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri, north, southeast, and west. And those soft white clouds drifting lazily across the afternoon sun, those were said to be the brains of Ymir cast into the air to provide the world with its shifting weather and mist. Archaeologists and historians look at these stories and see the reflections of a people who lived in intimate, often brutal contact with the landscape. The Vikings didn't see the earth as something separate from themselves. It was a living, breathing thing born of sacrifice and shaped by the hands of the divine. This cosmic man archetype, where the world is formed from a primordial being, is found in many cultures, but in the Norse tradition, it carries a specific weight of melancholy and beauty. It suggests that every mountain peak and every crashing wave is infused with a ghostly, ancient life. The three brothers then took the sparks of fire flying out of Muspelheim and fixed them in the center of the skull sky to create the sun, the moon, and the stars. They gave the sun and moon chariots and set them on their paths chased by wolves that ensured they would never falter in their journey across the heavens. Order had finally come to the Ginnungagap. The world was now a place of rhythm, of day and night, of tides and seasons. As you sit by your fire, breathing in the cool air of the night, you can feel the harmony of this created world. The gods had built a middle realm for themselves and for the creatures, yet to come a place called Midgard, protected by a fence made from Ymir's eyelashes to keep the chaotic giants at bay. But even as the world was shaped, the gods knew it was incomplete. It needed a soul. It needed a connection to the deeper mysteries of the universe. You feel a gentle pull now, a sense of gravity shifting. The earth beneath you is solid, formed from the ancient giant, but your gaze is drawn upward past the stars toward something much larger. Beyond the mountains and the seas, a great structure is beginning to reveal itself, a vast shimmering lattice that connects all things. It is the framework of reality, the living heart of the Norse cosmos. As the embers of your fire turn a soft, glowing orange, prepare your spirit to travel from the earth and the sea to the heights of the celestial branches. We are moving away from the story of how the world was built and toward the story of how it is held together. Let the image of the great void fade, replaced by the vision of a towering sacred tree whose roots reach deep into the hidden wells of the soul. Yggdrasil, the roots of the cosmos. As you drift further into this mythic landscape, the warmth of the fire from the longhouse seems to follow you, a golden memory held in your mind. But now the air around you has changed. It is cooler, fresher, smelling of damp earth, crushed ferns, and the ancient heavy scent of old-growth timber. You find yourself standing in a clearing of impossible vastness. Beneath your feet, the ground is not merely soil, but a carpet of deep emerald moss, so soft it feels as though the earth itself is breathing beneath your weight. You look down and see the silver glint of dew clinging to the clover, reflecting the light of a moon that seems larger and nearer than any you have ever known. Slowly and slowly, you lift your gaze. Before you rises a sight that defies the boundaries of the human mind. It is a tree, but to call it a tree is like calling the ocean a puddle. This is Yggdrasil, the world ash, the pillar of the 9 realms. Its trunk is a cathedral of gray-brown bark etched with deep furrows that look like the wrinkles on the face of a primordial giant. It is so wide that 1,000 men linking hands could not encircle it. Its lowest branches are thick as mountain ranges, disappearing upward into a canopy of shimmering translucent leaves that catch the celestial light, turning the sky into a mosaic of silver and green. You reach out a hand and touch the bark. It is rough cool and hums with a low rhythmic vibration, the heartbeat of the universe. In Norse belief, Yggdrasil is not just a symbol. It is the living architecture of reality. It is the axis mundi, the center around which all things revolve. The Vikings believed that if the tree ever trembled or began to wither, the very fabric of existence would unravel. As you stand there, you feel a profound sense of interconnectedness. You are not a stranger here. You are a part of this living system, as vital as the smallest leaf or the deepest root. The tree is supported by 3 massive roots that delve into 3 different wells, reaching into the hidden depths of the cosmos. One root travels to Niflheim, the realm of ice we visited in the void, where it is gnawed upon by the dragon Nidhogg. Another route stretches toward the land of the giants Jotunheim, seeking the well of Mimir, where all wisdom is stored. The third route remains in the realm of the gods, ending at the well of Urd, the well of fate. It is here by this third route that the 3 Norns, the weavers of destiny, dwell. They are the ones who carve the fates of men and gods into the wood of the tree, ensuring that every life, no matter how small, has its place in the grand design. You look up, squinting against the soft radiance of the upper branches. High in the highest reaches sits a nameless eagle, a creature of immense wisdom whose wings create the winds that sweep across the worlds. Perched between the eagle's eyes is a hawk named Vedrfolnir, watching the horizons with a piercing, silent gaze. But the tree is not a place of perfect peace. It is a place of dynamic tension. Scurrying up and down the trunk is Ratatoskr, the squirrel. He is the messenger, or perhaps the provocateur, carrying insults and gossip between the eagle at the top and the dragon at the bottom. You watch him for a moment, a flash of reddish fur against the gray bark. He represents the constant movement of information, the flickering thoughts that travel through the mind. The Norse understood that conflict and communication are essential to life. Even the 4 stags, Dain Dvalin, Duneyr, and Durathror, who leap among the branches grazing on the tender buds, remind us that the world is constantly being consumed even as it grows. This is the great paradox of Yggdrasil. It is eternal, yet it is fragile. It is under constant assault from the dragon's teeth and the stag's hunger. Yet it remains upright, sustained by the sacred waters of the wells. As you lean back against the mossy earth looking up through the lattice of branches, you begin to perceive the 9 realms nestled within the tree's embrace. In the highest canopy lies Asgard, the golden fortress of the Aesir gods, shimmering like a crown. Near it is Vanaheim, the lush, fertile home of the Vanir gods, and Alfheim, where the light elves dwell in palaces of pure radiance. In the middle, supported by the strength of the main branches, is Midgard, our world. From this perspective, you see the vast fences made of Ymir's eyelashes that protect humanity from the wild, chaotic lands of Jotunheim, where the frost giants dwell among jagged peaks and howling winds. You see the smoking forges of Nidavellir, where the dwarves shape the treasures of the earth, and the sun-drenched meadows of our own home, where the cycles of birth and death play out in the blink of a cosmic eye. Further down, where the shadows grow long and the air turns cold, lie the realms of the dead and the primordial. Helheim, the kingdom of the departed, is not a place of fire and torment, as in other traditions, but a silent, misty world of rest. And deeper still are the fires of Muspelheim, and the mists of Niflheim, where the roots first took hold. The ancient Norse people lived their lives in the shadow of this great tree. Archaeologists have found that many Viking Age settlements were centered around a world tree, a large sacred tree, often an ash or an oak, planted near the chieftain's hall or the local temple. At the great temple of Uppsala in Sweden, Adam of Bremen described a massive tree that remained green through all seasons, a living representative of Yggdrasil. When the Vikings looked at these physical trees, they weren't just seeing wood and leaves, they were seeing a map of the soul. To them, the tree was a reminder that the spiritual and the physical are intertwined, that the gods are as close as the wind in the leaves, and the ancestors are as near as the roots beneath the soil. You feel a sense of deep philosophical calm as you contemplate this. The archetype of the world tree speaks to our human need for structure and belonging. It tells us that we live in an ordered universe where even the dragon at the root has a purpose, and even the eagle at the top must be aware of the earth below. It teaches us about the beauty of the cycle. The water rises from the wells, nourishes the leaves, and then falls back as dew to the earth, returning to the source. Nothing is ever truly lost. It only changes form. The wind begins to pick up now, but it is not a cold wind. It is a sigh of recognition from the tree itself. You feel the branches swaying above you, a slow rhythmic motion that mimics the movement of the tides. The leaves rustle with a sound like 1,000 whispered secrets, and for a moment you feel as though you could understand them if you only listened a little more deeply. You are safe here, cradled in the ribs of the world, protected by the ancient strength of the ash. But as you watch the light fade in the lower realms and the stars begin to pulse with a more deliberate intensity, you notice a figure standing by one of the wells. He is a wanderer, cloaked in a mantle of deep blue, his wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his face. He is looking into the water not for his reflection, but for something far more precious. He is the master of this tree, the one who sought to understand every secret carved into its bark and every drop of water in its wells. The atmosphere grows heavy with the scent of ancient parchment and ozone. The peaceful rustle of the leaves is joined by a low chanting hum, the sound of a mind reaching out to touch the infinite. You realize that to truly understand the Norse world, you must follow this wanderer. You must see what he saw and pay the price he paid. As your eyelids grow heavy, let the image of the great tree remain in your mind, a steady, unyielding presence in the dark. You are beginning to drift now, moving away from the sight of the branches and toward the sound of the water. We are leaving the grand architecture of the realms to look into the heart of the one who rules them. The story is shifting from the world to the seeker, from the tree to the God who would sacrifice everything to know its truth. The Allfather's sacrifice, Odin's quest for wisdom. The blue twilight of the World Tree deepens now, turning into a velvet indigo that feels heavy and cool against your skin. You are no longer standing at the base of the trunk. Instead, you find yourself high within the middle branches of Yggdrasil, where the wind has a different quality, thinner, sharper, carrying the crystalline ring of the stars. Below you, the realms are blurred by a soft, luminous mist, and above the constellations seem to pulse in time with your own slow breath. You are in a place of profound solitude, the kind of silence that exists only at the highest altitudes of the soul. Nearby, the flickering light of a single ethereal torch casts long, dancing shadows against the gray bark of the world ash, and in that light you see him again, the wanderer, the seeker of secrets. He is known by many names, Woden Allfather, the Hooded One, but here in the quiet of the cosmic night, he is simply a soul yearning to understand the why of existence. You watch him move with a deliberate, weary grace. He does not carry himself like a king of golden halls, but like a man who has walked 1,000 miles through heavy snow. His blue cloak is tattered at the edges, and his wide-brimmed hat hides the most striking feature of his face, the empty socket where an eye once rested. As you settle into the mossy crook of a branch, the story of that sacrifice begins to unfold in your mind, not as a dry legend, but as a living memory. Before the world was fully settled, Odin traveled to the root of Yggdrasil that reaches into Jotunheim, the land of the giants. There lies the well of Mimir, a pool of water so still and dark it seems to hold the reflection of every thought ever conceived. Mimir the Wise One guards this well, drinking from it every morning, to maintain his unsurpassed knowledge of the past, present, and future. Odin, driven by a premonition of the coming shadows, sought a single draught from these waters. But wisdom, as the Norse understood, is never a gift. It is always an exchange. Mimir demanded a price that would ensure Odin never looked at the world in the same way, again his right eye. Imagine the weight of that moment. You feel the cool dampness of the well's edge, and hear the slow drip of water from the roots above. Odin did not hesitate. He sacrificed his physical sight, the ability to see the surface of things, to gain inner sight, the ability to perceive the hidden currents of fate. He dropped his eye into the well where it remains to this day, staring up from the depths, watching the roots of the world. This is the first lesson of the Allfather. To truly know the world, one must be willing to give up a part of oneself. It is an archetype of the wounded healer or the sacrificed god, reminding us that growth often requires the shedding of our old perceptions. But for Odin, the water of the well was only the beginning. As you watch him now on the high branches, you see him preparing for an even greater ordeal. He knows that there is a deeper logic to the universe, a language of power that precedes even the gods. These are the runes, the sacred symbols that weave the tapestry of reality. They were not invented, they were discovered, hidden in the very marrow of the World Tree. To win them, Odin undertook a shamanic journey that echoes through the centuries as one of the most powerful stories of spiritual initiation. You witness the scene as if through a dream. Odin fastens a rope to a branch of Yggdrasil and places it around his neck. He pierces his side with his own spear, Gungnir, and hangs himself from the tree. For 9 long nights he hangs there, suspended between the heavens and the earth, a voluntary sacrifice of himself to himself. There is no bread to eat, no horn of ale to drink. There is only the wind, the biting cold, and the immense crushing weight of the silence. As you breathe slowly, imagine those 9 nights. The first night is the struggle of the body, the second the wandering of the mind, the third the onset of despair. But by the 9th night, as the boundaries of his physical form begin to dissolve, the epiphany arrives. In the dark void beneath the tree, the runes begin to glow. They rise up like sparks from a fire, shimmering with a cold blue light. Fehu Uruz, Thurisaz Ansuz, each a key to a different force of nature. With a final agonizing cry of triumph, Odin reaches down through the veil of death and seizes them. He falls from the tree, not as a broken man, but as a being transformed. He has died to his old self and been reborn with the power of the word, the power of magic, and the power of song. The runes he brought back were more than just an alphabet. They were the tools with which the Vikings understood their world. To the ancient Norse, carving a rune into a stone or a sword was not merely writing. It was an act of creation, a way to channel the very energies Odin won on the tree. Scholars look at the elder Futhark, the oldest form of the runic alphabet, and see a complex system of belief where each letter is an archetype representing wealth, strength, chaos, or divine order. As you sit in the stillness, the image of the hanging god fades, replaced by the sight of Odin, as he is now the sage. You see his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, landing on his shoulders. They fly across the 9 realms every day and return at dusk to whisper into his ears everything they have seen. You can hear the soft rustle of their black feathers and the low guttural croak of their voices. Odin worries that Hugin might not return, but he fears more for Munin. For what is a soul without its memory? What is a world that forgets its own story? This part of the myth carries a profound emotional depth for those who listen in the quiet hours. It speaks to the human desire to find meaning in suffering. The Allfather is not a distant, perfect deity. He is a God who knows pain, who knows loss, and who is intimately aware of the ticking clock of destiny. He is the archetype of the sage, the one who seeks truth at any cost, because he knows that ignorance is the only true darkness. Archaeological finds such as the runestones scattered across Scandinavia and the British Isles serve as silent witnesses to this belief. Each stone is a fragment of the wisdom Odin won away for the ancient people to speak across time. When you run your fingers over the texture of your blanket, imagine it is the rough surface of a memorial stone, etched with the lines of the Futhark, carrying the names of those who lived, loved, and died under the protection of the Allfather's wisdom. The air around you begins to grow warmer now, though the stars remain bright. The intense, focused energy of Odin's quest begins to soften, shifting into something more grounded, more robust. The high, thin winds of the upper branches are replaced by the distant, rhythmic rumble of thunder, a sound that doesn't feel threatening, but rather like the heartbeat of a guardian. You feel a sense of immense gratitude for the secrets shared in the dark. The Allfather has shown you the price of wisdom, but now the cosmos offers a different kind of comfort. As the image of the ravens and the runes dissolves into the indigo night, you find yourself descending back toward the world of men, toward the smell of rain on hot stones, and the sound of a hammer striking an anvil. Let the mystery of the runes settle deep within you like a seed planted in fertile soil. You are moving now from the mind of the god to the strength of the protector. The shadows of the tree are giving way to the silver linings of storm clouds, and the silent seeker is stepping aside for the sun who carries the thunder in his veins. Thor and the thunder's protection. Imagine the air has grown thick and heavy, charged with a strange electric energy that makes the fine hairs on your arms stand still. The deep indigo of the cosmic night has given way to a gathering of bruised charcoal-gray clouds rolling across the horizon like a slow-moving mountain range. You are no longer in the high, thin branches of the World Tree, but back upon the solid earth of Midgard. You are standing on a high cliff overlooking a turbulent sea where the salt spray meets the first cool drops of a summer rain. The scent of ozone, sharp, clean, and invigorating, fills your lungs. In the distance, a low, guttural rumble echoes through the valleys. It is not a sound of threat, but a sound of presence. It is the steady, rhythmic heartbeat of a guardian. As you wrap your cloak tighter against the rising wind, you see a flash of light illuminate the clouds from within. It is not the jagged, frightening lightning of a nightmare, but a warm golden glow that speaks of immense power held in check. This is the realm of Thor, the son of Odin, and the earth itself. While his father wanders the lonely paths of the mind, Thor walks the rugged paths of the world. He is the champion of the common folk, the sturdy pillar upon which the security of Midgard rests. In the flickering light of the storm, you begin to perceive the silhouette of a massive chariot pulled by two powerful goats, Tangrisnir and Tungenjoster, their hooves striking sparks against the darkened sky. You feel a sense of profound safety in this presence. To the ancient Norse people, Thor was the most beloved of the gods because he was the most relatable. He was not a god of abstract mysteries or complex riddles. He was a god of action, of strength, and of unwavering loyalty. If Odin was the god of the chieftains and the poets, Thor was the god of the farmer, tilling the soil, the sailor navigating the fjords, and the family huddling together against the winter cold. When the thunder rolled across the Scandinavian skies, a mother might tell her child that Thor was simply driving his chariot, busy at work, keeping the giants of chaos at the edge of the world. Visualize the god as he descends toward the mountain peaks. He is a figure of vital ruddy health, with a beard as red as a dying ember, and eyes that flash like the sun hitting a glacier. On his hands he wears heavy iron gauntlets, and around his waist is Megingjörd, the belt of strength that doubles his already divine power. But your eyes are drawn to the weapon he carries, the most famous artifact in all the 9 realms, Mjolnir the Crusher. It is a hammer of strange proportions with a handle slightly too short for its massive square head, yet it is perfectly balanced in his grip. Mjolnir is more than just a weapon of war. As you watch the sparks fly from its surface, you understand its deeper symbolic meaning. To the Norse, the hammer was a tool of hallowing, a way to make something sacred. It was used to bless marriages, to sanctify the boundaries of a new farm, and to protect the community from the giants, the personifications of the wild, unthinking forces of nature like avalanches, floods, and droughts. Thor does not use his strength to oppress, but to maintain the boundaries of order. He is the archetype of the protector, the one who stands at the gate so that others may sleep in peace. Think of the millions of people who once looked to this god for comfort. Archaeologists have discovered thousands of small silver or iron Thor's hammer amulets in graves across the Viking world. These weren't just jewelry. They were symbols of identity and protection. In the late Viking Age, as a new religion began to move northward, many people wore the hammer alongside the cross, unwilling to give up the comforting presence of the Thunderer. When you hold a smooth stone in your hand today, you are touching the same elemental reality that those ancient people felt when they gripped their amulets during a storm. They believed that as long as Thor held his hammer, the world of men would endure. The storm above you begins to settle into a steady melodic rhythm. The rain falls in large warm droplets, washing the dust from the world and turning the parched earth into fragrant mud. You can hear the water rushing into the gullies, a sound of life and renewal. This is another facet of Thor. He is the god of the rain that makes the crops grow. Without his storms, the fields would wither. His power is the power of the summer thunderstorm that breaks a long heat wave, bringing relief and the promise of a harvest. In the quiet moments between the claps of thunder, you reflect on the emotional weight of Thor's duty. There is a certain loneliness in being the shield of the world. He spent much of his time traveling in the east, in the desolate lands of the giants, fighting battles that the inhabitants of Midgard would never even hear about. He represents the silent, often unrecognized work of those who protect their loved ones. He is the father who works until his hands are calloused, the mother who stays awake to guard a feverish child, the friend who stands by you when the wind turns cold. The clouds are beginning to part, now revealing patches of the star-strewn sky you saw before. The chariot of the god moves further into the distance, the sound of its wheels becoming a soft, fading hum. The lightning is now just a gentle shimmer on the horizon, like the blinking of a distant lighthouse. You feel a deep physical relaxation spreading through your limbs, a result of the tension of the storm being released into the cool, damp night. But as the air clears and the world becomes still once more, a different kind of shadow begins to move in the corner of your eye. Where Thor is straightforward and solid, this new presence is fluid and shifting. It is the flicker of a flame that refuses to stay in the hearth. It is the ripple in the water that changes the reflection. You realize that order, as represented by the hammer, cannot exist without its opposite. For every guardian who builds a wall, there is a force that questions why the wall is there. The scent of the rain-washed earth is slowly joined by the smell of wood smoke and a hint of something sweet, yet acrid, like spice burning in a fire. The stability of the mountain peaks feels less certain, and the shadows under the trees seem to dance with a mischievous intent. We are moving from the strength of the protector to the subtlety of the catalyst. As you settle deeper into your rest, lulled by the distant retreating rumble of the thunder, prepare your mind for a change in tone. The world needs its defenders, but it also needs its disruptors. The story is shifting from the hammer to the tongue, from the thunder to the whisper. We are about to meet the one who walks beside the gods, yet never truly belongs to them. Loki, the weaver of change. The rhythmic thunder has faded into the distance now, leaving behind a silence that is not empty, but heavy, with the scent of wet ash and cooling stone. You find yourself back within the sheltered walls of the longhouse, but the great roaring fire of the evening has settled into a bed of glowing, pulsating embers. The light is different now. It is no longer the steady, reliable, golden glow of the sun or the hearth. Instead, it is a shifting, dancing play of shadows and crimson light that creeps along the rafters and hides in the corners of the room. You watch a single flame, thin and bright as a needle, as it licks at a piece of charred oak. It flickers to the left, then to the right, never staying in one shape for more than a heartbeat. This is the essence of the presence that now enters our story. In the quiet, flickering dark, you begin to sense a figure sitting just beyond the edge of the light. He is lean with eyes that catch the ember's glow like a cat's, and a smile that seems to hide 1,000 unspoken jokes. This is Loki, the son of the giant Farbauti, and the mysterious Laufey. He is the one who walks the line between the gods and the giants, between the light and the shadow, and between the truth and the lie. He is not a god of the sky or the earth, but a god of the threshold, the space where one thing becomes another. Take a deep, slow breath and let the complexity of this figure settle into your mind. In modern stories, Loki is often cast as a simple villain, but the ancient Norse saw him with far more nuance. To them, he was a necessary spark. If Odin was the mind and Thor was the muscle, Loki was the catalyst. He was the friction that caused the fire to burn. He was the one who challenged the status quo, who forced the gods out of their complacency, and who, through his mischief, often brought about the greatest treasures the gods possessed. You feel the air around you shift, becoming lighter, more electric, as if the very atoms are vibrating with the possibility of change. As you watch the shadows dance, consider the relationship between Loki and the Allfather. Long ago, in the mists of time that even the ravens struggle to remember, Odin and Loki struck a bargain. They became blood brothers, mixing their essences in a sacred oath. Odin decreed that he would never drink a horn of ale unless Loki was also served. This bond is crucial to understanding the Norse world. It suggests that even the highest wisdom acknowledges the necessity of chaos. You are witnessing the archetype of the trickster, a figure found in almost every human culture, the coyote, the Anansi, the Hermes. They are the ones who break the rules so that new rules can be made. Imagine the silver tongue of Loki as he speaks. His voice would not be a roar like Thor's, but a melodic, persuasive whisper that sounds like the rustle of dry leaves. He is the master of Seiðr, a form of magic that involves weaving and shifting reality. The Norse used a specific word for the kind of cleverness Loki possessed, vel. It means both a device and a trick. He is the inventor of the fishing net, a tool that brings life-sustaining food, but does so through a trap. This is the duality of his nature. He is the one who cuts the golden hair of Sif Thor's wife in a moment of pure spite, only to be forced to travel to the depths of the earth to find the dwarves who could craft even more beautiful hair made of real gold. In that single act of mischief, the world gained not only Sif's new tresses, but also Odin's spear Gungnir, the ship Skidbladnir, and even Thor's hammer Mjolnir. Loki is the reason the gods have their power, yet he is the one they most often distrust. You feel the irony of his existence, the outsider who is essential to the inside. He represents the part of our own lives that is unpredictable. He is the sudden thought that changes our direction, the mistake that leads to a discovery, and the laughter that breaks a moment of unbearable tension. Historians and archaeologists have found rare depictions of Loki, such as the Snaptun, stone, a hearthstone found in Denmark. It shows a face with its lips stitched shut, a reference to a myth where Loki lost a bet and had his mouth sewn together to stop his constant manipulation. This image reminds us of the darker side of the trickster. As the ages progressed, Loki's tricks became more malicious, his laughter more brittle. The Norse didn't believe in a fall from grace in the way other cultures might, but they did believe in the gradual hardening of the heart. You see this in the shadows of the longhouse. The fire is dying, and the cold of the night is beginning to seep through the cracks in the wood. Loki, who once brought laughter to the halls of Asgard, would eventually bring the winter that never ends. But for now, in this middle hour of our journey, let yourself appreciate the beauty of the flame. Fire, like Loki, is a transformative force. It provides warmth, cooks food, and lights the darkness. But if left untended, it consumes everything it touches. The Norse people living in a world of ice and wood respected the fire above all else. They knew that change is the only constant. To resist change is to become brittle, like dry bone. To embrace it, as Loki does, is to remain fluid and alive, even if it comes with a price. As you settle deeper into your pillows, let the image of the shifting shadows lull you. There is a strange comfort in knowing that the universe has a place for the unpredictable. You don't need to control every outcome. Sometimes the best path is the one that is revealed through a twist of fate or a sudden clever thought. Loki is the reminder that the world is not a static painting, but a living, breathing, and sometimes messy story. The embers in the hearth are now a soft, pulsing orange, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The figure in the shadows has vanished, leaving only the scent of spice and wood smoke. The atmosphere in the longhouse is changing again. The tension of the trickster's presence is dissolving into a sense of ancient, weary peace. We are moving away from the individual gods and toward the history of the divine society itself. The story is turning toward a time of transition, a time when the two different tribes of gods, the Aesir of the sky and the Vanir of the earth, had to learn how to live together. It was a time of war that ended in a golden peace, a foundational moment that defined the Norse way of life. Let the warmth of the fading fire carry you toward a vision of green fields and golden halls. The whispers of the trickster are being replaced by the chanting of a great host and the clashing of shields that eventually turns into the sound of a celebratory feast. We are leaving the flickering shadows for the dawn of a new era. The Golden Age, the war of the Aesir and Vanir. Imagine the dawn is breaking over a world that feels young, fresh, and heavy, with the scent of wild clover and sun-warmed stone. The flickering, mischievous embers of the night have been replaced by a soft, pearlescent light that spills over the horizon, painting the jagged peaks of the mountains in shades of rose and gold. You find yourself standing in a wide, fertile valley, a place of such vibrant life that the air itself seems to hum with the vibration of growing things. This is the heart of the world in its first youth, a time the ancient poets called the Golden Age. But even in this era of splendor, the gods were not yet whole. They were divided into two great families, each with its own wisdom, its own powers, and its own vision of the cosmos. To your right on the high plateaus and in the halls of clouds dwell the Aesir. Led by Odin, they are the gods of consciousness, of war, of justice, and of the sky. They represent the ordered mind, the sharp edge of the sword, and the sovereign rule of law. To your left, in the deep forests and the rolling surf of the coasts, dwell the Vanir. They are the elder gods, deities of fertility, of health, of magic, and of the pulsing rhythms of the natural world. They are the masters of the seasons, the ones who ensure the salmon return to the streams and the grain rises from the soil. You are witnessing the fundamental tension of existence, the struggle between the civilized order of the mind and the wild vitality of the earth. As you walk through the morning mist, the atmosphere of peace begins to ripple. In the Norse world, even the Golden Age had its shadows. The myth tells of a mysterious woman named Gullveig, a practitioner of strange, ecstatic magic, who came into the halls of the Aesir. She spoke of nothing but gold and the lust for possession. Disturbed by her presence and her influence, the Aesir tried to destroy her, piercing her with spears and casting her into the fire 3 times. But each time she was reborn from the ashes. This act of violence broke the primordial peace. The Vanir, offended by the treatment of one of their own, demanded reparations, and when none were given, the first war in the history of the world began. Close your eyes and listen to the sounds of that ancient conflict. It is not the chaotic noise of modern battle, but a rhythmic elemental clashing. It is the sound of the wind fighting the mountain of the tide, battling the shore. For years the two sides fought to a standstill. The Aesir had their weapons and their strategic brilliance, but the Vanir had the magic of the land itself. They could crumble the walls of Asgard with a whisper, or summon the very earth to rise up against their foes. Neither side could gain the upper hand. The Norse poets use this story to reflect a profound truth that order cannot survive without vitality, and vitality becomes chaos without order. Eventually the gods grew weary. They realized that their struggle was tearing the fabric of the World Tree they were meant to protect. A truce was called, and the two families met on the field to forge a lasting peace. To seal this bond, they performed a ritual that reflects the ancient Scandinavian custom of hostage exchange. The Vanir sent their most beloved leaders, the sea god Njord, and his twin children Frey and Freyja, to live in Asgard. In return, the Aesir sent Honir, a god of great stature, and Mimir, the wisest of all beings. As you settle into a seat on a mossy boulder, watching the two groups of gods mingle in your mind's eye, consider the emotional weight of this reconciliation. It was a merging of cultures, a recognition that the other is necessary for completeness. From this peace, the gods became the Aesir. We know today a unified pantheon that combined the power of the sword with the magic of the soil. To symbolize their union, every god spat into a single cauldron. From this shared essence, they shaped a being named Kvasir, the wisest man who ever lived. He was the living embodiment of peace, a creature made of the collective breath and spirit of the entire divine community. However, the Norse tales always remind us of the fragility of such things. Mimir, the wise counselor sent to the Vanir, met a tragic end. The Vanir felt cheated by Honir's silence and beheaded Mimir, sending his head back to Odin. But rather than rekindling the war, Odin took the head, embalmed it with herbs, and chanted charms over it, so that it would continue to speak. Mimir's head became the source of secret knowledge we encountered earlier at the well. This detail, though grim to modern ears, speaks to the Viking belief that wisdom is often born from loss, and that the past must always be consulted to guide the future. Archaeologists see echoes of this myth in the way ancient Germanic and Scandinavian tribes formed alliances. The War of the Gods may be a mythic memory of a historical time when different religious traditions, perhaps an older earth-based cult and a newer warrior-focused belief system, collided and eventually fused into one. When you see old stone carvings of gods standing together, you are looking at the result of this ancient treaty. It is a testament to the power of integration. The sun has risen fully now, bathing the valley in a bright, clear light. The tension of the battle has dissolved into the warmth of a great feast. You can almost smell the roasting meat and the sweet fermented scent of honeyed mead. The gods are laughing together, their voices echoing off the mountainsides like rolling thunder. This was the true Golden Age, the time of the great peace when the heavens and the earth were in perfect alignment. You feel a sense of profound wholeness. The lesson of the Aesir and Vanir is one of balance. In your own life, you may feel the pull between your duties and your desires, between your logic and your intuition. This story tells you that these are not enemies, but two halves of a greater whole. By acknowledging both, you find the strength to stand as a pillar of the world. As you drift closer to sleep, lulled by the imaginary sound of the gods' celebration, the light of the sun begins to soften again. The grand historical scale of the war is narrowing down to a single radiant presence. One of the hostages from the Vanir, the goddess of beauty, love, and the darker arts of magic, is stepping forward. She carries with her the scent of spring flowers and the sharp metallic tang of the battlefield. The clashing shields of the warriors are being replaced by the soft tinkling of gold jewelry and the low mesmerizing chant of a spell. We are moving from the history of the gods to the heart of the most powerful woman in the 9 realms. The story is shifting from the truce of the many to the magic of the one, Freyja and the magic of Seiðr. As the echoes of the gods' great feast fade into the soft velvet silence of the night, you find yourself drifting away from the golden halls of Asgard and toward a realm that feels both more ancient and more intimate. Imagine you are walking through a field of tall, silver-tipped grass that ripples like the sea under a massive, low-hanging moon. The air is heavy with the intoxicating scent of night-blooming jasmine, wild roses, and the sharp, clean salt spray of a distant shore. This is Folkvangr, the field of the people, the home of the most radiant and complex goddess in the Norse pantheon. You are entering the world of Freyja, the daughter of the sea, the mistress of magic, and the sovereign of the heart. You see her now standing at the edge of a mirror-still pool. She is draped in a cloak made of 1,000 falcon feathers, shimmering with iridescent greens and browns. Around her neck rests Brisingamen, a necklace of such exquisite gold and craftsmanship that it seems to hold the very light of the morning sun. But do not be fooled by her beauty alone. Freyja is a goddess of profound duality. She is the lady of love and fertility, yes, but she is also a goddess of war. Half of all those who fall in battle do not go to Odin's Valhalla. They come here to her peaceful meadows to find their final rest. In her, the Norse saw the essential truth that life and death, desire and destruction are inextricably linked. As you settle onto a soft bank of moss, watching the moonlight dance on her golden necklace, consider the magic she brought from the Vanir to the Aesir Seiðr. This was not the structured runic wisdom of Odin, but a fluid shamanic magic of the soul. It involved the weaving of fates and the shifting of reality through song and trance. To practice Seiðr was to sit upon a high platform, or Seiðrshálfr, and travel beyond the physical world. It is the archetype of the lover and the sorceress, the one who understands that the universe is not just made of stone and wood, but of threads of energy and intention. Imagine the sound of her voice as she begins a low rhythmic chant. It is a sound that vibrates in your chest, a melody that seems to pull at the very fabric of the night. Through Seiðr, Freyja could see the future influence the minds of others and heal wounds that no medicine could touch. But this magic came with a weight. The Vikings respected the power of the Velva or seeress, but they also feared it. It was a magic of becoming, of losing one's fixed identity to touch the infinite. As you listen to the imaginary chant, let your own boundaries soften. You are safe here, protected by the goddess who understands the deepest longings of the human spirit. Freyja's emotional depth is perhaps most visible in the myth of her lost husband, Odin. It is said that he would often wander into far lands, leaving her behind. In her grief, Freyja would travel the world searching for him, weeping tears of pure red gold. When her tears fell upon the earth, they turned into gold. When they fell into the sea, they became amber. This image of the grieving goddess, whose very sorrow enriches the world, is a powerful archetypal lesson. It tells us that our pain, when felt deeply and authentically, can be transformed into something of lasting beauty. The amber found on the shores of the Baltic Sea was to the Norse the tangible evidence of a goddess's love and longing. Archaeologists have found evidence of the high status held by women who followed Freyja's path. In graves across Scandinavia, they have discovered wand bearers, women buried with ornate iron or bronze staffs, symbols of their role as practitioners of Seiðr. These women were the spiritual anchors of their community's advisors to kings and commoners alike. When you think of Freyja, do not think of a delicate figure in a garden, but of a powerful, independent woman who owned her own land, chose her own companions, and commanded the respect of the most formidable gods. You watch as Freyja moves toward a chariot, pulled by two large blue-gray forest cats. Their fur is thick, their eyes glowing with a quiet, predatory intelligence. They represent the untamed, instinctive side of nature that Freyja commands. There is a slow, graceful power in their movements, a reminder that the world of the spirit is not always gentle. As she prepares to depart, she looks toward you, and for a fleeting second, you feel a sense of profound recognition. She is the spark of desire that drives all creation, the courage to love in a world that is often cold, and the wisdom to know that even the stars must eventually fade. The fragrance of the flowers begins to drift away, replaced by the cool, damp scent of the earth after a rain. The silver light of Folkvanger is receding, and the landscape is shifting once more. The focus is moving from the magic of the goddess to the physical safety of the god's home. You feel a sense of rising tension, a need for structure and defense. The open fields are giving way to the sight of massive unhewn stones and the sound of a heavy hammer striking against a chisel. As you fall deeper into your rest, lulled by the memory of Freyja's chant, the world is becoming more solid, more fortified. The gods are no longer wandering the meadows, they are looking toward their borders. They are realizing that even the most beautiful home needs a wall, and that even the gods must sometimes make bargains that carry a hidden sting. We are leaving the realm of the heart and entering the realm of the fortress. The story is shifting from the magic of the Vanir to the great construction of Asgard's walls, a tale of giants' horses and the high price of security. The building of Asgard's walls. The soft amber glow of Freyja's meadows fades into a cold, sharp moonlight that reflects off the jagged peaks of the celestial mountains. Imagine you are standing on the high ramparts of Asgard, the home of the gods. The air here is thin and biting, carrying the scent of pulverized granite and the iron-rich tang of mountain springs. You look out over the horizon and see the dark, forbidding shadows of Jotunheim, the land of the giants stretching out like a vast, hungry sea. For a long time the gods lived in a world without borders, but the peace with the Vanir and the growing restlessness of the giants have taught them a hard lesson. Even a paradise needs a wall. As you lean against a cold stone pillar, the story of the great bastion begins to take shape in the darkness. It was a time of unease. The gods sought a way to fortify their realm, but the task was monumental, beyond even their divine strength. Out of the mountain mists stepped a stranger, a master builder of immense stature. He offered to build a wall so high and so thick that no giant could ever hope to breach it. But his price was astronomical. He demanded the hand of the goddess Freyja in marriage, as well as the sun and the moon themselves. To give up Freyja is to give up the heart of the world. To give up the sun and moon is to plunge the cosmos into eternal night. You feel the tension in the air as the gods debate this bargain. Loki, ever the provocateur, convinced the Aesir that the task was impossible for a single man to complete in one winter. They agreed to the stranger's terms, but with a strict condition: if a single stone was missing from the wall by the first day of summer, the builder would receive no payment. They believed they were getting a half-finished wall for free, but they underestimated the builder, and more importantly, they underestimated his horse Svadilfari. Imagine the sound of the work through the long winter nights. It is a rhythmic, punishing thud of hooves and the grinding of stone against stone. Svadilfari was no ordinary stallion. He was a creature of supernatural strength and endurance. By night he hauled boulders the size of houses, and by day the builder set them with a precision that seemed like magic. As the deadline approached, the gods watched in growing horror. The wall was nearly complete, rising like a gray mountain toward the sky. They realized they were about to lose the light of the sun, the mystery of the moon, and the grace of Freyja. In their desperation, the gods turned on the one who had led them into the trap. They threatened Loki with a slow and painful end unless he found a way to stop the builder. You see the flash of panic in Loki's eyes, followed by the familiar cold light of a new scheme. He knew he couldn't fight the builder or the horse directly, so he chose the path of the shapeshifter. On the final night of winter, as Svadilfari was hauling the very last stones needed to finish the gate, a beautiful shimmering mare emerged from the woods. The great stallion, overcome by instinct, broke his harness and chased the mare into the dark forest. Without his horse, the builder could not finish the task. When the sun rose on the first day of summer, a small gap remained in the wall. The builder, realizing he had been tricked, revealed his true form, an enormous mountain giant, roaring with a fury that shook the foundations of Asgard. His rage was short-lived, however, as Thor returned from the east and silenced the giant with a single thunderous blow from Mjolnir. As you sit in the silence that follows the echo of the hammer, consider the moral weight of this victory. The gods saved their world, but they did so through a broken oath and a deception. This is a recurring theme in Norse mythology, the idea that order often requires a compromise of integrity. The Wall of Asgard stands as a symbol of security, but it is also a monument to the fear of the other. In your own life, you might recognize the walls we build to protect ourselves, the boundaries we set, and the bargains we make. This myth asks us to consider the cost of that protection. What do we sacrifice when we choose safety over truth? Archaeologists and historians find echoes of this story in the massive hill forts and defensive earthworks scattered across Scandinavia and Britain, like the Danevirke in Denmark. These were projects of immense human labor built to keep out invaders and define the edges of a kingdom. When the Vikings looked at their own stone and timber fortifications, they saw a reflection of the gods' great wall. They understood that to live in a world of giants, one must be prepared to build, to defend, and sometimes to trick. The night is deepening now, and a new sound begins to emerge from the darkness of the forest where the mare and the stallion disappeared. It is the sound of 8 hooves striking the earth in a rhythmic supernatural gallop. Months later, Loki returned to Asgard, leading a strange gray foal named Sleipnir. This 8-legged horse became Odin's personal mount, the fastest and most powerful creature in the 9 realms, capable of galloping over the sea and through the air. Sleipnir is the living embodiment of the blessing that can come from a curse, the unexpected gift born from a moment of crisis. You feel a sense of weary peace as the image of the Great Wall settles into your mind. It is a solid, unyielding presence protecting you from the chaos beyond. The giants are far away, and the gate is closed. But as you watch Odin mount Sleipnir and ride toward the horizon, you notice a shadow moving near the feet of the gods. It is not a giant nor a horse, but a young wolf pup, small and seemingly harmless. The atmosphere is shifting from the physical defense of the realm to a more psychological, existential threat. The gods have built their wall of stone, but they are about to face a challenge that no wall can hold back: the growth of a power that was born in their own midst. As you fall deeper into your rest, lulled by the steady beat of Sleipnir's hooves, prepare your spirit for a story of tragedy and sacrifice. We are moving from the construction of the fortress to the binding of the beast. The story is shifting from the triumph of the builder to the biting chains of fate. The binding of Fenris, the cost of fate. The massive cold stones of Asgard's walls now loom behind you, a silent silhouette against a sky that has turned a deep, bruised violet. The air is no longer sharp with the scent of mountain granite. Instead, it carries a primal, muskier aroma, the smell of wet fur iron, and the metallic tang of fear. You are standing on a desolate plain at the edge of the world where the grass is sparse, and the wind howls with a mournful, hollow sound. In the center of this clearing, a group of gods stands in a tense circle. Their faces, usually radiating divine light, are etched with a grim, heavy-hearted resolve. At the center of their gaze lies a creature that has grown beyond the limits of nature, Fenrir the Great Wolf. You watch the wolf as he paces his paws, leaving deep indentations in the earth. He was not always this monster. Born of Loki and the giantess Angerboda, he was brought to Asgard as a pup. The gods, sensing a dark destiny attached to him, hoped that by raising him in their own halls, they might tame the wildness in his blood. But Fenrir grew with an unnatural, terrifying speed. Each day he became larger, his eyes burning with an intelligence that was both ancient and predatory. He is the archetype of the shadow, the suppressed force that grows stronger the more we try to ignore it. The gods realized that no wall could contain him, and no kindness could change what he was destined to become. Take a slow, deep breath and feel the weight of the gods' predicament. They knew the prophecies. They knew that one day this wolf would swallow the sun and bring about the end of their reign. Yet to kill him now would be to stain the sacred soil of Asgard with blood, an act they could not bring themselves to do. Instead, they chose the path of the chain. They invited Fenrir to a game of strength, challenging him to break the mightiest iron bonds they could forge. Twice the wolf allowed himself to be bound, and twice he shattered the links like dry straw with a single stretch of his powerful limbs. In their desperation, the gods sent a messenger to the dwarves, the master smiths of the underworld. You can almost hear the rhythmic clinking of their subterranean hammers as they fashioned a bond unlike any other. They did not use iron or steel. They used the impossible ingredients of the world, the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. The result was Gleipnir, a ribbon as thin and soft as silk, yet stronger than any chain ever made. This is a profound metaphor in Norse thought that the most powerful forces in the universe are often the ones we cannot see or touch. As you sit in the gathering gloom, watch the gods present this silken ribbon to the wolf on the island of Lyngvi. Fenrir, sensing the trickery in the ribbon's lightness, grew suspicious. He looked at the gods with his amber eyes and made a demand that would define the tragedy of the Aesir. He would allow himself to be bound only if one of the gods placed their right hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. Silence fell over the host. The gods looked at one another, each knowing that to fulfill the oath meant losing a limb. Out of the crowd stepped Tyr, the god of justice and single combat. He is the archetype of the noble sacrifice, the one who pays the price so that the community may endure. You see him walk toward the massive beast with a calm, steady gait. He placed his hand between the wolf's jagged yellow teeth. The gods wrapped the silken ribbon around Fenrir's legs. The wolf struggled, heaved, and strained, but the more he fought, the tighter Gleipnir became. When he realized he was truly trapped, his jaws snapped shut. A heavy silence descends upon you, now broken only by the low, guttural growls of the bound wolf. Tyr did not cry out. He stood with a stoic grace, his blood staining the earth, while the other gods laughed in relief, all except Tyr, for he knew the true cost of their safety. The Norse people held Tyr in high regard because he represented the integrity of the law. To them, justice was not a soft thing. It was a hard, often painful commitment that required real sacrifice. When you feel the weight of a difficult decision in your own life, you are walking in the shadow of Tyr. Archaeologists have found several depictions of this scene on ancient bracteates and stones, showing a man placing his hand in a beast's mouth. These artifacts served as a reminder of the high price of order. The Vikings understood that fate or word is a web that binds everyone, even the gods. By binding the wolf, the gods did not change their destiny. They only postponed it. They chose a temporary peace bought with a permanent scar. This myth teaches us about the complexity of our choices, how the things we bind or suppress in the present will eventually return with a hunger that cannot be satisfied. The gods eventually took a sword and wedged it into the wolf's jaws, the hilt in the lower jaw, and the point in the upper, to keep him from biting. It is said that the foam flowing from his mouth forms the river Van, which means hope. Though in this context it is a dark, ironic hope for the day of his release. As the image of the bound wolf fades, you feel a lingering sense of melancholy. The victory of the gods feels hollow, overshadowed by the knowledge of what is to come. But the night does not stay in this place of sorrow. The wind begins to shift, blowing from the direction of the golden halls once more. The heavy metallic scent of the plain is being replaced by something sweet and intoxicating, the smell of honey-fermented grain and the wild, heady aroma of inspiration. The story is turning away from the chains of fate and toward the liberation of the spirit. We are moving from the God who gave his hand to the God who stole the very essence of art. As you fall deeper into your rest, lulled by the distant rhythmic flowing of the river Van, prepare your mind for a journey into the hidden caves of the giants. We are leaving the binding of the beast for the theft of the mead of poetry. The mead of poetry. The gift of inspiration. The desolate plains of the bound wolf recede into a thick, swirling mountain mist, turning the world into a landscape of charcoal and silver. Imagine you are no longer standing on the solid earth, but moving with the fluidity of a dream deep into the heart of a mountain. The air here is cool and damp, smelling of ancient stone and the deep, rich scent of honey that has aged for 1,000 years. You are following the wanderer Odin as he embarks on one of his most daring and transformative thefts. This is the story of the mead of poetry, the sacred liquid that grants anyone who drinks it the gift of the scholar's tongue and the poet's heart. In the silence of the mountain cavern, you begin to perceive the origins of this liquid. It was born from the blood of Kvasir, the wisest being who was formed from the spit of all the gods. Kvasir had been murdered by two dwarves, Fjalar and Galar, who mixed his blood with honey to create a mead that contained his total essence. Eventually, the mead fell into the hands of a giant named Suttung, who hid it in 3 massive vats, Odrerir Baden and Son, and placed them deep within a mountain guarded by his daughter Gunnlod. You are witnessing the archetype of the hidden treasure, the secret wisdom that lies buried in the subconscious, guarded by the shadows of our own resistance. As you settle into the stillness of the cavern watch, as Odin uses his shifting nature to gain entry, he did not come with an army. He came with a drill and a whisper. He convinced Suttung's brother to help him drill a tiny hole through the rock, and then, in the form of a slender snake, he slithered through the narrow crack. This is the second lesson of the Allfather, that wisdom cannot always be taken by force. Sometimes it must be reached through persistence and the willingness to change one's shape. Inside the mountain, he found Gunnlod, a giantess, who sat alone in the dark, guarding the treasure of her father. Imagine the 3 nights Odin spent with Gunnlod. It was not a battle of weapons, but a slow, rhythmic exchange of stories and companionship. By the end of the 3rd night, moved by his presence, she allowed him to take 3 sips of the mead, 1 from each vat. But Odin, with the thirst of a god who knows the world is ending, drained every single drop. He transformed himself into a great eagle and took flight, his wings beating against the stone walls of the mountain. As he burst out into the open sky, the gold-red liquid burning like fire in his throat. You can feel the rush of the wind as you follow the eagle's flight back toward Asgard. Suttung, having discovered the theft, also took the shape of an eagle and gave chase. It was a race across the heavens, a desperate flight between the old world of the giants and the new world of the gods. As Odin reached the walls of Asgard, the gods set out vats to catch the mead. Odin spat the liquid into the vessels, but in his haste and the heat of the chase, a few drops fell onto the earth below. These stray drops are said to be the source of all bad poetry, the clumsy lines and uninspired songs of those who try to speak without the true divine spark. Consider the emotional and philosophical weight of this myth. To the Vikings, poetry or skaldskap was not a hobby. It was a sacred craft. It was the way they preserved their history, honored their ancestors, and touched the divine. The mead of poetry represents the divine madness, the moment of inspiration where the words flow without effort and the truth is revealed in a flash of beauty. It is a reminder that art is a gift from the gods, but one that was won through sacrifice, cunning, and the crossing of boundaries. When you feel a sudden spark of creativity or find the perfect words to express a deep feeling, you are tasting a drop of the mead Odin won in the mountain. Archaeologists see the importance of this myth in the picture stones of Gotland, which depict the eagle, the snake, and the vats of mead. These stones were markers for the dead, perhaps suggesting that the gift of poetry was what allowed a person's name to live on forever. The Norse believed that physical things decay, but a well-crafted verse is eternal. When you listen to the rhythmic cadence of a story or the melody of a song, you are participating in a tradition that reaches back to the very blood of the wisest man. The eagle's wings have ceased their frantic beating, and the air is turning still and warm once more. The mountain mists are clearing, revealing a garden of impossible lushness and color. The scent of aged honey is being replaced by the fresh, crisp aroma of ripening fruit. We are moving from the theft of inspiration to the preservation of life itself. The focus is shifting from the god who steals the mead to the goddess who guards the fruit of immortality. As you fall deeper into your relaxation, lulled by the golden warmth of the mead in your mind, prepare your spirit for a change in tone. The world is beautiful and full of song, but the gods are beginning to notice a new sensation, a stiffness in their joints, a grayness in their hair, and a sudden sharp fear of the passage of time. We are leaving the mountain of the giants for the orchard of the gods. The story is shifting from the drink of the poets to the apples of the young. Idun's apples, the fragility of immortality, the golden heady warmth of the mead of poetry lingers in your mind, but the mountain air has softened. Imagine you are walking through a garden where the light feels perpetual, a soft, honeyed afternoon that never quite reaches dusk. The ground beneath your feet is a carpet of wildflowers, their petals brushing against your ankles with the lightness of a secret. This is the orchard of Idun, the goddess of youth and rejuvenation. The air is filled with the crisp, sweet scent of ripening fruit and the gentle humming of bees. Here time seems to hold its breath, caught in a cycle of eternal spring. In the center of this orchard stands Idun herself, a figure of quiet, radiant grace. She carries a casket made of dark, polished wood, and within it lie the most precious treasures of Asgard, the golden apples. You watch as the gods approach her, their faces reflecting a weariness that you haven't noticed before. Unlike the gods of other mythologies, the Norse gods are not naturally immortal. They are susceptible to the creeping shadows of age and the slow erosion of time. They survive only by eating the fruit Idun provides. You are witnessing the archetype of the elixir of life, the source of vitality that must be carefully guarded. A shift in the atmosphere occurs as you settle onto a bench beneath a blossoming tree. The story of the great theft of Idun begins to unfold. It started, as many troubles do, with Loki and a hungry giant named Thjazi. While traveling, Loki was captured by the giant who had taken the form of a massive eagle. To win his freedom, Loki was forced to make a terrible oath he would lure Idun and her apples out of the safety of Asgard. You see the conflict in Loki's eyes, the survival instinct, warring with his loyalty to the gods. One morning, Loki approached Idun, telling her he had found even more beautiful apples in a nearby forest. Trusting her companion, she stepped beyond the golden gates. In an instant, the shadow of the eagle Thjazi fell over her. He swept her up in his talons and carried her far away to his mountain fortress in Jotunheim. Back in Asgard, the effect was immediate and devastating. Without the daily gift of the apples, the gods began to change. You feel the heavy, cold realization that even the divine can fade. Their skin grew pale and wrinkled, their hair turned the color of winter frost, and the strength in their limbs began to fail. Imagine the mood in the great hall. The laughter has died away, replaced by the sound of labored breathing, and the sight of trembling hands. The gods realized that they were dying. This is a profound reflection on the Viking worldview that everything, even the highest power, is subject to the cycles of nature. To them, youth was not a permanent state, but a gift that required constant nourishment. They looked at the winter trees and saw their own mortality. This part of the myth carries an emotional depth that speaks to our own fears of aging and the preciousness of the time we are given. The gods, in their waning strength, demanded that Loki bring Idun back. Using Freyja's falcon cloak, he flew to the giant's hall. He found Idun alone and grieving, her apples clutched to her chest. With a quick chant, he transformed her into a small hazelnut, gripping her in his claws and taking flight, as the giant eagle Thjazi pursued them. You can hear the frantic beating of wings and the desperate gasps for air as the two birds raced toward the walls of Asgard. The gods, watching from the ramparts, gathered piles of wood shaving. As soon as Loki cleared the wall, they set the wood ablaze. The giant, unable to stop his momentum, flew into the flames and fell to his death. As you breathe in the cooling night air, watch as Idun returns to her original form and opens her casket. The gods eat, and you see the color return to their cheeks, the light return to their eyes, and the silver fade from their hair. The transition from old age back to youth is like the first thaw of spring, a rush of life returning to a frozen world. But there is a new sobriety in their eyes. They have looked into the abyss of their own end, and they know now that their immortality is a fragile thing, held in the balance by a few pieces of golden fruit. Archaeologists have found small apple-shaped amulets and carvings that suggest Idun's story was a way for the Norse to process the changing seasons. The kidnapping of Idun is the coming of winter when the earth becomes gray and old. Her return is the spring, the rebirth of the world. When you bite into a fresh, crisp apple today, you're tasting a symbol that once represented the very survival of the gods. The golden afternoon in the orchard is finally beginning to fade into a deeper, more solemn twilight. The scent of the apple blossoms is lingering, but it is being joined by a new ethereal aroma, something like lilies and clean linen, mixed with a hint of cooling incense. The sense of frantic survival is giving way to a profound, quiet beauty. We are moving from the preservation of life to the tragedy of the most perfect life ever lived. The focus is shifting from the apples of youth to the God who is too bright for the world to hold. As you fall deeper into your rest, lulled by the steady, rhythmic breathing of the rejuvenated gods, prepare your heart for a story of light and shadow. We are leaving the orchard of Idun for the halls of the most beloved of the Aesir. The story is shifting from the fear of aging to the grief of the first death. The death of Balder, the shaded sun. The vibrant colors of Idun's orchard have softened now, turning into a world of silver gray and hushed whispers. Imagine you are standing in a hall made of light itself, a place where the pillars are carved from white marble and the floor is as clear as a frozen lake. This is the home of Balder, the son of Odin and Frigg, the most beloved of all the gods. He is the personification of joy, beauty, and innocence. It is said that he is so fair that light radiates from his skin, and even the most stubborn of the gods find peace in his presence. You are entering a moment of profound stillness, the kind that precedes a great and inevitable change. As you settle into the quiet of this celestial hall, you feel a heavy sense of foreboding. The story of Balder's end is the most tragic in all the Norse mythos. It began with a dream, a dark recurring vision of doom that troubled Baldur's sleep. When he spoke of these shadows, a cold fear gripped the heart of Asgard. His mother, the queen goddess Frigg, could not bear the thought of losing her son. She traveled through all the 9 realms, speaking to every rock, every tree, every metal, and every disease, exacting an oath from each that they would never harm Baldur. She even spoke to the fire and the water, the birds and the beasts. Imagine the relief that followed. The gods began a game, standing in a circle and throwing stone spears and axes at Baldur, watching as the weapons simply bounced off him, unable to break the oath of the world. It was a celebration of invulnerability, a moment where it seemed that death had finally been defeated. But in the Norse world, perfection is a fragile thing. Loki, watching the festivities with a growing bitter envy, saw a flaw in the plan. He disguised himself as an old woman and approached Frigg, asking if truly everything had sworn the oath. Frigg, in her motherly pride, admitted she had passed over a tiny, insignificant plant called mistletoe, thinking it too young and powerless to demand a promise from. You watch as the shadow of Loki moves through the forest, seeking the one thing that can break the light. He found the mistletoe, fashioned it into a sharp dart, and returned to the circle of gods. There stood Hödr, Baldur's brother, who was blind and could not join in the fun. Loki placed the dart in Hödr's hand and guided his aim, telling him it was a way to honor his brother. The dart flew through the air, small and unassuming, but as it struck Baldur's chest, the impossible happened. The light vanished. Baldur fell to the earth, and for the first time in history, a god lay dead. The silence that followed was more deafening than any thunder. You can feel the collective breath of the universe catching in its throat. The Norse saw this as the ultimate turning point, the loss of innocence that signaled the beginning of the end. Baldur is the archetype of the sacrifice light, the purity that cannot survive in a world of growing complexity and shadow. His death was not just the end of a life, but the end of an era. The gods wept, and it is said that their tears became the dew that covers the world each morning. The funeral of Baldur was a grand, mournful affair. They placed him on his great ship Hringhorni and set it ablaze as it sailed out into the dark sea. His wife Nanna died of a broken heart and was placed beside him. Even Odin's horse was led onto the pyre. As you watch the flames consume the ship on the horizon, consider the depth of the grief. The gods sent a messenger, Hermod, to the realm of Hel, the goddess of the dead, begging for Baldur's release. Hel agreed, but only on one condition: every living and dead thing in the universe must weep for him. Every stone, every leaf, and every creature cried out in sorrow, save for one giantess in a cave, believed to be Loki in disguise, who refused to shed a tear. Because of that one hard heart, Baldur remained in the halls of the dead. This detail reflects a harsh reality of the Viking age, that one's fate is often determined by the actions of others, and that even the most universal grief can be thwarted by a single act of malice. It is a reminder of the power of the individual to affect the collective. Archaeologists have found evidence of the Baldur myth in various carvings and bracteates, often showing the moment of the mistletoe's flight. To the ancient people, this story explained why the world was no longer perfect. It was a way to process the existence of evil and the inevitability of loss. When you see the mistletoe hanging during the winter months today, you are looking at a plant that in this tradition represents the unintended consequence, the small thing that changes everything. The fire of the funeral ship has burned down to a low, flickering glow on the surface of the dark water. The air is turning cold, a chill that doesn't come from the night, but from the very bones of the world. The period of mourning is shifting into something far more dangerous. The grief of the gods is turning into a grim, cold resolve. We are moving from the funeral of the light to the beginning of the great winter. As you fall deeper into your rest, lulled by the rhythmic sound of the waves hitting the shore, prepare your spirit for the coming storm. The sun is losing its warmth, and the wolves are beginning to howl at the gates. The story is shifting from the death of one to the end of all. We are leaving the halls of mourning for the battlefield of the final day. Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. The soft, mournful glow of Baldur's funeral pyre has finally vanished beneath the horizon, leaving the world in a darkness that feels different, sharper, heavier, and profoundly ancient. Imagine you are standing on a high, wind-swept ridge in Midgard. The air no longer carries the scent of spring flowers or the warmth of the summer sun. Instead, it is bitter with the smell of dry frost and the metallic tang of approaching snow. The stars above seem to be shivering, their light flickering as if they are afraid to look down at the earth. This is the beginning of the Fimbulwinter, the winter of winters. For 3 years the sun will provide no warmth, and the seasons will cease their dance. There will be no spring, only an endless white silence. As you pull your heavy wool cloak tighter around your shoulders, you feel the shift in the very soul of the world. In the Norse view, the end of the world is not a sudden accident, but an inevitable unraveling of the threads woven by the Norns long ago. The bonds of society begin to break first. You hear the phantom echoes of brothers, fighting brothers, and the cries of a world where oaths no longer hold meaning. This is the Axe Age Sword Age, described in the Voluspa. The moral center of the universe has collapsed, and the physical world must follow. The silence of the frost is suddenly broken by a sound that vibrates in the marrow of your bones. It is the howling of wolves, not the wolves of the forest, but the cosmic hunters, Skull and Hati. High above they finally catch their prey. You watch as the sun is swallowed, and the moon is torn from the sky, leaving the 9 realms in a terrifying, absolute gloom. The earth begins to shudder and groan. The great ash Yggdrasil trembles from its deepest root to its highest leaf. The chains that held the monsters are snapping. You hear the triumphant, blood-curdling roar of Fenrir as he breaks free from Gleipnir, and the sickening splash of the Midgard serpent Jörmungandr as he rises from the depths of the ocean, his venom poisoning the very waves. Now imagine the sound of the Gjallarhorn. Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, stands upon the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost and blows a note so long and so loud that it rings through every corner of the cosmos. It is the call to the final battle. From the south, the fire giants of Muspelheim approach, led by Surtur with his flaming sword. From the east, the frost giants sail on Naglfar, a ship made from the fingernails of the dead. And from the halls of Asgard, the Aesir ride out for the last time. They do not ride with the hope of victory, but with the grim, stoic courage of those who know their fate and choose to meet it standing. You are witnessing the archetype of the end of the cycle. Unlike many other traditions where the final battle is a triumph of good over evil, Ragnarök is a total conflagration. It is the moment where order and chaos consume one another. You watch as Odin the Allfather is swallowed by the wolf Fenrir, fulfilling the prophecy he spent his life trying to outrun. You see Thor strike down the great serpent with Mjolnir, only to take 9 steps and succumb to the creature's venom. Tyr, Frey, and even Loki, who has led the army of the dead, all meet their ends on the plain of Vigrid. Consider the emotional resonance of this story for the Viking people. They lived in a world where the elements were often hostile and life was fragile. Ragnarök reflected their belief in amor fati, the love of one's fate. To the Norse, greatness was not measured by whether you won or lost, but by how you faced the inevitable. There is a profound beauty in this twilight of the gods. It suggests that even in the face of total destruction, dignity and courage remain. When you face a moment of great difficulty in your own life, you are drawing on that same ancestral strength, the ability to stand firm even when the stars are falling. Archaeologists see the impact of this myth in the way the Norse processed the transition to Christianity. Many stone carvings from the 10th and 11th centuries show scenes of Ragnarök side by side with Christian imagery, suggesting that the end of the old gods was a way for people to understand the changing of an era. The world they knew was ending, but the story gave them a framework to understand that destruction is often the precursor to something new. The heat from Surtur's flaming sword is now overwhelming, turning the frozen world into a sea of fire. The earth sinks into the boiling ocean, and the black smoke of the burning world tree fills the sky. The screams of the battle fade into the roar of the flames, and then slowly into a silence deeper than the one that existed at the beginning of time. The 9 realms are gone. The gods are fallen. The great architecture of the cosmos has been reduced to ash and steam. But as you drift in this absolute stillness, you feel a gentle change in the air. The heat of the fire is receding, replaced by a coolness that is not the biting frost of Fimbulwinter, but the refreshing mist of a new morning. The darkness is no longer heavy. It is the soft, fertile dark of a seed waiting to sprout. We are moving away from the ashes of the old world. The story is not ending. It is turning a page. As you fall into a deep, peaceful sleep, lulled by the rhythmic sound of a calm sea, prepare your spirit for a vision of emerald green. We are leaving the battlefield of the gods for the birth of a new earth. The green earth rebirth and the new morning. The roaring flames of Surtur and the terrifying cries of the final battle have faded into a silence so profound it feels like a physical embrace. Imagine you are floating in a dreamlike void where the air is cool and tastes of rain-washed stone. The thick black smoke of the burning cosmos has begun to thin, drifting away like the remnants of a heavy dream. Slowly, a new light begins to dawn, not the harsh, scorching glare of the fire, but a soft, pearlescent glow that rises from a horizon you thought was gone forever. You are witnessing the miracle of the great return. In the Norse worldview, time is not a straight line that ends in a wall. It is a circle, a wheel that turns through the dark only to find the light once more. As you settle into this new stillness, look down. From the dark churning waters of the deep, a new earth is rising. It is green, lush, and more beautiful than the world that came before. You see mountain peaks emerging from the waves, dripping with crystal-clear waterfalls that catch the morning light. The forests are already thick with leaf and vine, and the fields are already heavy with unsown grain, nodding in a gentle, warm breeze. This is the archetype of rebirth, the promise that life is an unquenchable force. The Norse believed that even after the total destruction of Ragnarök, the essence of the world, the fylgja, or soul of the earth, remains ready to bloom again. You drift toward a high sun-drenched meadow called Idavol, the same place where the gods once played their games in the morning of time. You are not alone. From the shadows of the World Tree, which survived the fire by sheltering within its own ancient heart, two humans emerged, Liv and Livthrasir life, and striving for life. They have survived the end of the world by hiding in the wood of Yggdrasil, nourished by the morning dew. You watch as they step out onto the fresh grass, their faces filled with wonder and a quiet, resilient hope. They are the new father and mother of humanity, the ones who will fill the world with stories once again. But the humans are not the only ones to return. You see a small group of figures walking toward the center of the meadow. These are the survivors of the divine host. You recognize Vidar and Vali, the sons of Odin, who represent the strength of the new generation. You see Magni and Modi, the sons of Thor, carrying their father's hammer, Mjolnir, not as a weapon of war, but as a tool of hallowing for the new world. And then, most miraculously, you see them Balder and Hoder, the light and the shadow, walking side by side, their old grievances washed away by the fires of the ending. They have returned from the halls of hell, symbolizing a reconciliation that was impossible in the old age. As you sit in the warmth of this new sun, the daughter of the sun that was swallowed by the wolf, consider the profound philosophical lesson of this ending. The Norse did not seek to avoid the twilight, for they knew that without the fall of the old, the new could never rise. This is the cycle of the seasons writ large across the cosmos. It tells us that our own lives are part of a much larger, enduring story. Even when we face our own Ragnarök, the loss of a dream, the end of a chapter, or the passing of a loved one, the green earth is waiting to rise again. Your spirit, like the earth, has an innate capacity for renewal. In the grass of the Idavol plain, the gods find something glinting in the light. They reach down and pick up the golden chess pieces they used to play with in the first golden age. As they hold these pieces, they remember the old stories, the deeds of Odin, the strength of Thor, the cleverness of Loki. This is a beautiful image of cultural memory. The stories do not die. They become the seeds for the next world. Archaeologists see this reflected in the enduring power of these myths. Though the temples of Uppsala and the longhouses of the Vikings are gone, the stories are being told right now in the quiet of this night, living on in your mind. The air is becoming very still, now filled with the soft, rhythmic chirping of birds in the new forests. The sun is higher in the sky, but its light is gentle, like a warm blanket being tucked around you. You feel a sense of completion, as if a great complex knot has finally been untied. The journey from the void of Ginnungagap to the rebirth of the world is finished. You have walked with the Allfather, felt the thunder of the Protector, laughed with the Trickster, and mourned with the Light. You carry the wisdom of the 9 realms within you now. The image of the green meadow begins to soften, turning into a hazy golden blur. The sounds of the new world are fading into the rhythmic slow beat of your own heart. You are safe, you are whole, and you are part of a story that never truly ends. The great ash tree stands tall in the center of your mind, its roots deep and its branches reaching for the stars, holding you in its steady, eternal embrace. Let the warmth of the new morning carry you into a deep, dreamless sleep. The cycle is complete. The world is reborn. And you are at peace. The Echoes of the North, an Eternal Legacy. The golden morning of the new earth remains fixed in your mind, but the vision begins to shift, softening like the edges of a dream, as you slowly return to the present moment. Imagine you are no longer standing in the dew-drenched meadows of Idavol, but in a quiet, dimly lit room. Perhaps it is a library filled with the scent of old parchment and beeswax, or a cozy study where a single candle flickers against the window pane. Outside, the modern world continues its frantic pace, but inside this circle of light, the ancient North still breathes. You can hear the rhythmic ticking of a clock, a steady heartbeat that bridges the gap between the age of the Vikings and the world you inhabit today. As you settle deeper into your rest, consider how these stories, the ones we have shared through the long hours of the night, did not vanish with the fires of Ragnarök. They did not disappear when the last longship was pulled from the water, or when the old temples were replaced by stone cathedrals. Instead, they went underground, flowing like the hidden rivers of the Allfather into the very foundations of our language, our art, and our understanding of what it means to be human. You are witnessing the archetype of the enduring spirit, the way a culture's soul survives its own physical passing. Look closely at the world around you, even in the quiet of your room. You might find that the gods are closer than you realize. Every time you speak the names of the days, you are uttering a prayer to the ancient Aesir. Tuesday belongs to Tyr, the one-handed god of justice. Wednesday is Woden's day, the day of the Allfather. Thursday is Thor's day, the protector of the common man. And Friday belongs to Frigg or Freyja, the mistresses of love and the home. These names are linguistic fossils, remnants of a time when the movements of the stars and the passage of time were seen as the deliberate acts of the divine. You carry the map of the Norse heavens in your very calendar. In the 13th century, long after the official end of the Viking Age, a man named Snorri Sturluson sat down in the cold volcanic landscape of Iceland to write. He was a poet and a scholar who looked back at the fading echoes of his ancestors and realized that if the stories were not captured on parchment, they would be lost to the silence of history. He gave us the Prose Edda, a treasure chest of myths that preserved the voices of the gods for centuries to come. Because of him, we know the weight of Mjolnir and the price of Odin's eye. You can almost smell the ink and the dry sheepskin as he labored by the light of a whale oil lamp, weaving the fragments of the poetic Edda into a narrative that could withstand the passage of time. As you breathe slowly and steadily, think of the stray drops of the mead of poetry that Odin spilled over the earth. Those drops fell into the minds of dreamers, writers, and artists across the generations. They fell into the imagination of J.R.R. Tolkien as he walked the halls of Oxford, dreaming of Middle-earth Gandalf the Wanderer and the broken sword that would be forged anew, echoes of Odin the Runes and the legends of the Niflungs. They fell into the music of Richard Wagner, whose soaring operas brought the ring of the Nibelungen and the ride of the Valkyries back to the ears of a modern audience. These myths are the fertile soil from which much of our modern fantasy and storytelling grows. Archaeologists continue to pull these stories from the earth today. Every silver hammer pendant found in a field, every rune stone unearthed in a forest, and every ship burial revealed by the retreating tides is a physical proof that the Norse world was one of profound complexity and beauty. These people were not merely raiders. They were poets, lawmakers, and explorers who looked at the horizon and saw not a boundary, but a challenge. They understood that the world is a place of constant struggle, but they chose to meet that struggle with a stoic, quiet grace that still resonates in the northern soul. The lessons of the North are perhaps more relevant now than ever before. In a world that often feels chaotic and disconnected, the story of Yggdrasil reminds us that all things are connected, the root to the leaf, the god to the dragon, and the past to the present. The story of Ragnarök teaches us that endings are not to be feared, but accepted as the necessary precursor to rebirth. And the story of Odin's sacrifice reminds us that the quest for wisdom is the highest calling of the human spirit, regardless of the price we must pay to find it. You feel a sense of profound peace as you realize that you are now a keeper of these stories. By listening to them in the quiet hours of the night, you have taken a sip of the mead yourself. You carry the memory of the World Tree and the courage of the gods within your own heart. The ancient North is not a museum piece. It is a living part of you, a whisper in the wind and a spark in the fire. The candle in the study is burning low now, its flame a soft, steady point of gold in the darkness. The library walls are receding, and you find yourself back in the safety of your own bed, wrapped in the warmth of your own world. The journey through the 9 realms has come to its final rest. The wolves have ceased their howling, the hammers have fallen silent, and the gods are sleeping in the green meadows of the new morning. The rhythmic ticking of the clock is slowing down, merging with the slow, deep cadence of your breath. The stories have done their work. They have built a wall of protection around your mind, a fortress of ancient wisdom that no shadow can breach. You are safe. You are tired. You are ready to let go of the day and enter the realm of dreams where perhaps you will walk the rainbow bridge once more. Let the final echoes of the north fade into a velvet silence. The stars are watching over you just as they watched over the longships and the hearth fires of old. The journey is over, and the new world is waiting for you when you wake. Sleep now under the protection of the ash in the cradle of the world.